Okay, Arnold. So it's been a while since we've talked about bodybuilding, hasn't it?
It has been.
Now, we're talking about it today because you're thinking about doing another competition.
I'm thinking about doing another show, yes.
Yeah. And now I know you haven't committed yet, so I don't want to nail you down, but you think that it'd probably be in April, right?
Probably in April.
Okay.
Mid to late April, possibly May, early May.
Okay.
Somewhere in there.
Similar time frame to this last time.
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things we've talked about, we're starting a lot earlier. Last time we started this series of podcasts, you were a month out from your show. And, it was sort of like the final assault on show preparation. This time we're starting, we have sort of the benefit of perspective. And so you've been thinking about what you did right the last time and what you may have done wrong. And I actually asked you this question at the end of your preparation. I think it was like right before competition
day.
You
did.
And you said, well, I'll defer that. So what do you think you did right? What do you think you did wrong? What do you think you'll do different?
Let's start with diet, first of all. Diet is brutal. As you know, with any show, I think it just gets to a point where it's difficult and hard on your body because you've got to drop calories. But I think through my first two show experiences, I think what I learned was that my body responds well to a decrease in carbs. And
in other words, you lose weight.
I lose weight, right?
Yep.
Which obviously is the goal here, to lose some body fat so you can show off your definition. And it became very clear in show number one that when we dropped carbs, I started to lose the weight and burn some fat. And then with show number two, we kept the carbs higher for a longer period of time, and I hit some plateaus. One severe plateau where
I remember that.
Yeah, that was kind of ugly. And then once we dropped carbs again, things started to progress along. So in those terms, in diet terms, I'll drop the carbs and play with the diet a little bit more, which, as a matter of fact, I've already started to do.
Right. So you and I, as a result of kind of getting into this periodization thing, I done some work and I found this thing called the metabolic diet. And I'd done these low carb diets before, and like the Atkins would be an example of that, or the South Beach in the popular press. This metabolic diet, from what I can determine, is, son of Atkins, although they want to call itself father of Atkins because he claims to have been doing it earlier, but and so you actually got the book.
I got the book.
Okay, and so you've actually begun to try to do it. You took off a couple of pounds, right?
Yeah, in the first week.
Now we're in a phase right now where we're not trying to gain weight. This isn't our hypertrophy. This is our max strength. And so they say to try and hold steady during this phase if you look at the book.
Right.
And so, you lose 2 pounds going on a metabolic diet. It's more or less holding steady, really. Who knows where those 2 pounds came from? Okay, and so is that something that you think you'll do, and then just kind of get yourself used to that, and then stick to it throughout the whole period between now and May?
Well, I'm thinking along those lines. The metabolic diet, at least the book describes it as, you go on super low carb, and you have this induction phase of super low carbs for 12 days, and then you can carb load for anywhere between 12 and 24 hours. And depending on how you feel your body looks and feels is when you stop the carb load and then go back to the low carb part of the diet. And then it turns out to be, once you kind of get past that 12 days of induction phase and carb load once, it becomes this 5 days of low carbs, and then the weekend you can carb load to a certain extent between this 12 and 48 hours, and then you go back on.
Yeah, I thought it was 12 and 48, right?
Yeah. With the premise of that being you'll be able to control A, your body weight, but B, you'll become more familiar with how your body responds when you put carbs in it and where you're going to look your best and feel your best. So I've decided that since my body responded well to the low carbs, it's worth a shot.
Yeah, well, I like that because I remember I went through all of that with you, and the part that drove me kind of crazy, it actually caused me some concern from time to time, was you got stuck on those plateaus, you didn't know how to make it go down, you do severe thing after severe thing, and I mean, it just seemed, overly brutal. I mean, it seemed the low carb thing was clearly part of the answer, so I think it's good we're starting back there, and I think it's good that you're parameterizing it a little bit too. We'll have a chance to talk about this metabolic diet as we go through. I'm thinking about doing it myself, and there's this whole measurement routine, because I've done Atkins, and Atkins was good. There's this whole measurement routine that you do with it, and we might even have some discussion on that.
Right.
And how you do that, and, that I could see that being its own little how-to podcast. Okay, so this is bodybuilding. Now, it's interesting to me that a lot of our focus with you has been what I'll call body melting away. I mean, that's what this diet is, right? But you're doing different stuff in the bodybuilding regimen too. So this is a multi-pronged approach. Somebody's making a shake in the background, so I'll have to speak up. The podcast in the wild here. So what are you doing there? Give us an overview.
Well, again, through the first two shows, the training remained pretty much the same, where it was this lift as heavy as you can once you decide you're going to do a show, and build up the muscle, and then once it comes time to diet down, you spend your 12 or 14 weeks dieting down, and yes, I got stronger, yes, I think I put some muscle on, but there was never any sense of how much muscle did I put on, or, how much stronger did I get. It was, you got to lift heavy and build up, some muscle. So there was never any definitive there. So after this last show, I had looked around and knew that, was somewhat familiar with periodization, knew that there were programs that could take you through some length of time, whether it be a few months up to a year, maybe 2 years, depending on how long you want to do it, through a regimented training program. And so, initially we looked at a couple of different periodization programs before we settled on the serious strength training. So I knew I wanted to change that up and have it be more regimented, and then you came across the serious strength training.
Yeah.
That has put us into this whole cycle, which is what I originally wanted, some cycle of hypertrophy, and then, the mass strength within the power training to help build all aspects of the muscle. So that's what we're doing differently this time with the training. It's a much more defined approach to how we go about building up.
I would say overall, if I was to look at, and I'm, by the way, participating in this program, or just a spectator, I would say the overall program is one, this time has a lot more measurement in it, and a lot more seeing where you are, which I think is kind of critical, because that was another thing that sort of got me, is we never really knew how much muscle mass, was going on versus fat, and then how much, when weight was coming off, where was it coming off? That's kind of another point too. You don't want the muscle. Well, you're going to wind up losing some muscle, but you want to kind of tilt that towards fat versus muscle.
Right.
And so I have a feeling that that's going to be another journey. And by the way, this is not an official announcement of you going forward. It's just sort of, I think, thinking seriously about it. So I'll be interested to see that. So, I think we've got a different training approach. We've got and a different diet approach. I'm pretty happy with those. I think we've got some measurements. I think we'll be able to talk about those, and I think it'll be helpful to other people trying to do this. A lot of bodybuilders I see, it's exactly what you described, this sort of pummel yourself, and this is where a lot of the anabolic steroids come in too, because basically what they would like is for their bodies to withstand that pummeling and respond to it better, and one way to do that is to artificially jazz yourself with something. And this, I think, is much more attuned to a natural approach to these things. So, you know, we'll see how it goes. All right.
We'll definitely see how it goes.
So we'll do one of these things. Maybe we'll do, you know, we'll do various analytic and posing and God only knows as time goes by kinds of series. So I think it should be a lot of fun. All right, Arnold.
Later.